Welcome to another episode of the Winner Folsom podcast, your source for battle-tested leadership and resiliency. And today we have another great guest for you, don't we, Philip?
Yeah, this is actually, you're a longtime friend of mine, Andy.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And it was really cool to see you in the airport. I think we were in Chicago.
We were in LA. You were on your way to Chicago. I was on my way
Oh.
to Detroit, I think.
Cool. So it's just crazy to, in a city this size, to run into people you know and go like, wow. You know?
Yeah.
So there's some aspects of the different versions of your life that maybe you don't share to everybody, but you're a Marine, you're a musician, you're one of the first Red Bull sponsored athletes ever, right? In the very beginning of that whole genesis.
When they first came to the US, yeah.
You're one of the men that brought CrossFit to Los Angeles, and you started, a really cool online fitness community program, Whole Life Challenge. And that's one of the things that I joined that, was really transformational for me. You're a father, you're a husband, and you're a coach. And so you're a man who's walked a lot of lives and been successful in all those arenas. That's a pretty solid track record of efficacy that you bring to your clients and our conversation. So welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thanks for the intro. I'm honored to be here.
So, hey, since I've known you, like you were doing entrepreneurial work, you were doing a whole bunch of other things, and then you moved into coaching.
Yeah.
What was the transition there?
Shit, you go right to it. From the outside, the way you paint the picture, you'd look at the top dots of all the things in my life that have gone fantastically, and everything looks great. Like, wow, success, win. And I would say that for the most part, that was true up until this transition to coaching. I built the Whole Life Challenge out of a way to empower my community at CrossFit LA to take more responsibility for themselves and their life outside of the gym.
And share the Whole Life Challenge, what it was.
Yeah, it's like a gamified version of health and wellness. There's a lot of them out there now, but back when we started it, there were 7 habits. There was sleep, there was exercise, there was mobility, there was, I think, supplementation is one element. Water, hydration.
Yeah.
We called them well-being practices, and they changed every week of the challenge to keep it fresh. And the last one was reflection. You had to reflect on, and nutrition, obviously nutrition. And you got points for each one of those things. You kept track of yourself, and it was all based on the honor system. And we ran the first one at my gym. We were going to do it with an Excel spreadsheet, and we had a couple clients who were software engineers, and they were like, don't do it on Excel. We'll build you a website. Trust us, it's going to be great. And it was great. It shifted the context of the conversation at the gym, and it shifted the responsibility that people were taking outside of the gym. It did exactly what we wanted it to do. First one was a resounding success. And then we were like, well, how do we build on this? And we're like, well, people get better results when they do it with people that they care about. So how can we let these people invite their friends and family? So we did another version of the website that now people could invite their friends and family. We did it the next year. We doubled the size, and phenomenal, incredible. And then we went wider. We went to all the relationships I had in the CrossFit world. And we had, in that first global challenge, I think we had 8,000 people in the first challenge. And so it was an overnight success. It wasn't an overnight success from our standpoint. I had started something 10 years before that was a fitness only version of a challenge. So I'd been really thinking about challenges for 10 years at that point. And we also built it in a way that allowed affiliate owners, when they brought their community, to earn money from it, so that it wasn't just a send people to Andy and Michael to do this. It was like, hey, no, take ownership of your community, take ownership of your people, and bring in your teams and do it, and we'll give you a revenue share. And the model was a great model. It worked really, really, really well. Year over year, we were growing at about 20%. In 2019, we had our biggest challenge. 2018, we had our biggest challenge ever. We had about 30,000 people in one challenge. We were doing 4 of them a year. And so on paper, that looks fantastic. We were doing, I think that year we did 3.2 million. We were on track. We're like, okay, this is going to be, and I had put all my eggs in this basket. This is kind of the way I've done my life. When I jump into something, I put everything into that one thing. And don't spread myself too thin. Told my wife, look, 5 years from now, you may not have to work. We're going to sell this thing for 20 million, 30 million. Who knows? Sky's the limit. And it's one of those things where it worked really well until it didn't. And we hit what we thought was a hiccup. We had a lower than normal growth in the fall challenge of 2018. It just wasn't 20% growth. It was like 7 or 8% growth. And we thought, okay, this is just a road bump. We'll be back in the January challenge. And the January challenge is the biggest one. because it's the time of year everybody's already thinking about their self-improvement. And instead of the 32,000 we were expecting, we got 15,000. That was a little bit of a bigger hiccup. And I had been brainstorming ways to shift the business for probably 3 or 4 years, but there was never a conversation internally to our company. I couldn't get traction on a conversation because everything worked. We were always trying to grow the size of the challenge and improve the product itself. So in that moment, I started to try to change things, and I started breaking things in doing that. I broke relationships. I broke kind of integrity from not my intention about where I was headed, but the integrity of the community and the product with which we had already built, and started to lose trust internally. We lost a couple of our team members, our employees, who were really they're really my long-term friends. These are people I knew from way back in the early days of the CrossFit world.
So was this an internal sabotage to get you free?
I think so. I don't know that I could have internally, I don't think that I could have orchestrated that except through, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't think I sabotaged it personally, but there was a stagnation internally to growth, to change. Like, we're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting it to just continue to keep doing it. And it didn't. And by May of that year, I imploded. I had a full-on mental, emotional, spiritual breakdown. I think I called you in the middle of that and you're like, oh yeah, you just went to visit Iron. There's Iron John. There's the man.
Yeah.
And that didn't help. Thanks, Philip.
Oh, it did.
Well, I didn't feel so alone. It did help in that I didn't, okay, this is normal, but it didn't help get me out of it. I was trapped in a spiral of anxiety, depression, couldn't leave the house. There was a point at which I was contemplating canceling a family trip that we were taking to go to the East Coast because I was kind of afraid to step foot out of the house. And that really didn't let go. It slowly started to let go, really January-ish. And that was January of 2020, which was a couple months before COVID hit. And as I was coming back, I was having trouble finding my way back into the same world, doing it the same way. I was kind of tired of the grandiosity of thousands of people doing this, trying to do this thing and trying to figure out how to get more people to do it. I was tired of not being able to be happy that one more person was doing it. I didn't care about one person. I needed 1,000 people. And that felt very inauthentic to me. If I have a conversation with Philip Folsom and I get him to do the challenge because I know it's going to change his life, that's enough. But it's not enough from the business perspective. And in June, right around
Andy, when you were at the dark night of your soul, the abyss, what'd you find down there? Who was the source of your problems?
Well, me. I don't even know.
So
is this a trick question?
No, it's almost rhetorical.
I am the fucking 100% source of,
and that's ultimately what we all discover down there at some point, is that the assailant is us.
Yeah.
And then we start addressing that old relationship, right, with that inner critic, dragon, whatever belief system. And so how did you start reforming that relationship with yourself?
The thing that I started to see was how my life had gone from highlight to highlight to highlight to highlight. And I had based my worth and value and enoughness on winning, on success, on proving, on, being at the top of my game in anything and everything that I do. And
me too. You're not alone there.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about the way this happened was it was such a setup. It was such I felt like I got dangled out in the middle off a fishing rod, like way out over top of the Grand Canyon, and it just fucking dropped me. And because it was so unexpected, I had to reformulate who am I? I had to who am I without my business? Who am I without the accolades? Who am I without needing to prove my worthiness and my value?
That's the work. It sounds like it was actually a big blessing for you, because I see some men in particular, but it happens to all humans, who will literally have the business and actually have the exit. And then it's elusive because it's like, now what? And then it actually becomes the next big goal. Even if you hit your goal that you originally told your wife, then it would be the next goal and you'd be hunting the next thing, and you may live the rest of your life hunting something out in the future because it's never enough to satiate that enoughness. Versus amazing what I'm hearing you said is you had to go face the inadequacy, which is what Philip's saying is the dragon. We had to go be with the messy parts of life of like, oh, this isn't serving me anymore, right? Like this old operating. So we use language like old operating system from childhood, which was how we avoided the wound or overcame our initial wound as a child. I was like, if I'm adequate enough, then I'll be better. Like, then I'll get the love. Then I'll, right? But then as an adult, we're like, is this actually working anymore? Because one thing throws us off and it triggers our whole inadequacy wound, right? And that's what, at least as you were talking, it was like, oh, I'm on track. Yeah. This thing got thrown off. It just threw you into like that inadequacy wound, right? Is what at least what we're hearing. And then it'll force you to go into it to face it, right? Which is powerful.
Yeah, it's it's funny because I've done a lot of work on myself up until that point. I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology. I've studied this shit. I've studied it in myself. It's been experiential, but nothing prepared me for the experience of the drop. Like that had to happen. You're right. If I had successfully had the exit, and that wouldn't have fixed it. I could have in theory had the idea, but I would never have known what I know. It allowed me to relate to other human beings in a way that is so much more profound and deep. And I feel like I was seeing like one color of life, and now it's a fucking rainbow.
Yeah.
And it was a blessing, absolutely a blessing.
So now Andy Petranek, personal coach, right?
Yeah.
And certainly what you have gone through has established the roadmap that you're taking other people through.
Yep.
Right. That's kind of our journey. The same thing that I'm taking my people through. Josh, you're the same story. Like that, that this is something that we're doing. And many of the people who are watching this are looking at transitions from one phase of life to another. That's one of those. And we have a lot of, we're all veterans here, and there's a lot of veterans who are watching, who are looking at. So I'm being forced into another phase of my life. So what is it that will provide meaning and purpose, significance? And at some point, there is a service that we end up offering the world that is defined by the suffering that we ourselves went through, that gave us the ability to navigate our own pain or transformations. And that's probably some wisdom for all the men and women watching that are looking at what's the next version of me. And it's going to be connected to the thing that broke your heart. For everybody watching, the thing that is our source of passion. And I always redefine the word passion as not being heightened emotion, but it's actually suffering. Passion is a thing that the amount of suffering we're willing to take on for something that's significant, like the passion of the Christ is when he was crucified. And so that abyss that you went through, that we've all been through in some capacity, or is imminently waiting for you, is that crucifixion moment. The resurrection is right after that. We don't get resurrected until we've been crucified. So there is an imminent date that we have with the abyss at some point. And we fight and we fight and we fight to stay out of the abyss by chasing the external validation. But at some point, there is a deep gravitational pull to the cave we fear to enter that contains the treasure we seek. And so, your really heartfelt journey into that is the roadmap for other people. And Josh, I get a lot of this from you because you're just masterful at taking people through the really messy abyss transitions, because it's something you did
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting how life throws us these curveballs, and in the moment it's so painful. And then it allows us to actually have so much compassion and presence with others, right? Like it's like one of those things where you can be there with somebody in their darkest night of the soul, because you're like, I could be there with my darkest night of the soul. And so there's not a charge or a trigger. I find if we haven't done that type of work, then typically somebody starts to talk and we're like, can't go there. Like, because it's triggering all the things we haven't faced yet. So unfortunately, I think we're forced to take those on when life throws us unexpected, painful curveballs.
Yeah. Like I feel like now I can climb into the pit with someone, and I don't even have to climb in. I'm just there. I'm just there. Like it's sometimes I try to be more courageous, but and not emote, but it always fucking comes in. For me, it's just tears are just like right there all the time. I've just accepted it. It's just, that's my indicator that I'm connected here. And
Hey, recent discovery, or has that always been Andy?
I think it was always Andy, but it was shut off then back when I was 5 or 6 years old, when it wasn't cool and I was trying to be a strong boy and, real man. And, Marines don't cry, professional athletes don't cry. What is there to cry about? One of my first coach told me in my first session with her, she's like, boy, you need to cry. And I almost fucking left and didn't come back. Because I was angry. I was like, fuck you. What do you mean I need to cry?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
And then I was a blithering idiot, probably 3 sessions later.
So for people who they recognize the imminent arrival of the pit, or they're in the pit or have been in the pit, what are some of your best practices to navigate that deeply uncomfortable experience?
Well, there are a few things. So there were a few people that I really trusted that I talked to. You were one of them. There were 2 therapists that I went to visit on separate occasions, 2 different times, not related. Both of them told me what a beautiful experience I was having and how great it was I was going through this.
Like, fuck you.
Exactly. Fuck you. Fuck you. What do you mean? I think, it's funny. I'm looking around my office. I've got quotes from Winston Churchill up. Never, never, never give up. And success is walking from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. It's remembering that things change and you've got to keep going. And I think the thing that I did that was very helpful was just to stick with my daily habits. And I know it's cliche, but man, I go for a walk run every morning. I write my journal, I meditate, I do mobility and stretching, and sticking with those real foundational habits. I remember, God, I'm feeling it right now. Like there's angst that comes when I go back and experience it fully. Like I don't want to go back there because it feels like you're not going to get out. It feels like you're trapped. It feels like these practices, why bother? Fuck it. Like I'm just going to go back to bed. And somehow I didn't. I'm very grateful that I didn't. I already had a lot of that stuff anchored into my life and my lifestyle. But that's what I would say is find some very solid foundational practices that just allow you. Exercise is another one, like do a workout. It's just doesn't have to be hard. I love little fucking 10-minute kettlebell workouts. They're great. Even if you still feel like shit when you're done, because you probably will.
Hey, we thank you for listening to the Winner Folsom podcast. Just a couple quick notes. First, if you are a man and you're looking for an honorable and inspiring group of men to hold you accountable and challenge you to grow in your relationships, your fitness, your career, your finances, and your life, go to www.k4men.com. And if you are a veteran, first responder, or man or woman who deals with trauma, and you are looking for some resiliency tools and skills for you, your team, your organization, go to valorresiliency.com. Hope to see you there. Back to the podcast.
I've recently, it's written on my warboard here, reclaiming Sisyphus. It's kind of just worth sharing with everybody because I always really rejected that particular myth. I like the Prometheus myth, he helps mankind and brought fire and he's punished for that. And that makes sense because how dare you give the power of gods to humans? But Sisyphus is a very similar story, that he was this benevolent titan and was punished by pushing this rock up a hill forever that never gets over the top. And then it rolls down and sometimes crushes him. And the next day it's the same thing. And I just recently read that how multiple Stoic philosophers have embraced that myth as this redemptive, uplifting, aspirational story that I thought was just a complete punishment story. What a horrible thing to have all of your work mean nothing. And the Stoics interpreted that story as this is the iconic framing of a successful person, is that you have a rock to push. You wake up every day and you have a rock to push. Yep. You meditate, you journal, you do your workout. That rock doesn't mean anything, but it means everything to
because it's an act of creation. And like what I always come back to is human beings are manifesting creators. And I have a whole slew of little sentences that I've written to remind me of who I am. So every morning I write these sentences out. And one of them is that the word is not a statement of fact. it's an act of creation. Like whatever comes after is, Andy is strong. Andy is courageous. I am strong or courageous. I'm creating that as who I am. And I get the choice every day that I wake up to create myself as that. And if I don't make that choice, I'm allowing the universe to decide for me. And so my practice is to continue to create me each day as I go forward in my life, because I get to make that choice and I get to create. And I hopefully get to do that with my wife and my relationships, and it doesn't always work, but do my best.
I just had a couple comments that anybody's listening to just to relate to the process, because I'm actually going through this with a client as well right now, where for me, our metaphor of the abyss on the hero's journey is the map is you're in a dark cave. You're already in the cave. You're going down a new path. You can't go back and you don't know what's ahead of you. So you're in this dark cave. You can't see, and all you have is a headlamp, and you can see 3 feet in front of you. And so for me, that metaphor is so helpful, because your practices is all you can do is keep walking, right? You have to be vigilant because you only have 3 feet in front of you. It's all you can see. So what can you do in that 3 feet practice is you keep walking, right? Which is the practices, because otherwise it can be really scary. People want to go back. You want to sit down on the ground and get paralyzed. Like there's all these things you can do, but the practice of just focus on what you could do as your consistent habits is the metaphor of like, you're going to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, but you got to keep moving and you got to keep staying active. And if you get knocked down or you numb one day or you sit down and feel hopeless, okay, get back up and start walking, right? It's just like the continual practice of, okay, well now get walking again, because you got to get out of the cave, and it's going to be forward momentum. It's not going to be sitting around or laying around. So I just thought I would mention that because it ties in perfectly to the map. And one other piece I'll say, just to connect the dots from my viewpoint or my observation, most of us are healing codependency. So a lot of times we're coming into this world codependent on other humans. And that's also tied to our adolescent stories of like validation or healthy attachment to parents, family, community. And it's tied to our worth and our value. So a lot of times what we're doing is we're unraveling that and learning how to regulate with ourselves, learning how to be with our own wounding. Like there's a lot of growth that happens. And that's, I feel like, why it's so hard a lot of times is we've gotten our validation or our emotional regulation from the world and how we engage with the world. So we've attached to the world, especially as men, we attach to, oh, if I'm successful, oh, if I have a partner, oh, if I transform my body, if I do this thing in the world, then I'll be valid, then I'll be enough. And so that external thing we're engaging with can really throw us off. And I think a lot of us, the practice we're doing is learning to go, how can I still build, but how can I regulate to myself? So I don't need this thing to validate me, but I can actually validate myself and I can bring myself to the world to serve it. So we're kind of moving from that external validation as currency to service as currency. And that's like kind of for me, the unwinding that I see that a lot of us are doing is we're unwinding codependency, learning how to move in independence and still engage in the world. It's just that's
what Andy's saying is, Joshua it's not what the world is telling you who you are.
Yeah, it's who
Joshua is. And one other add to this is and you guys have both mentioned already, but it's worth repeating, is that there is another thing outside of the cave. And when you're in the cave and you have no evidence that there is another thing, that's a very, very crippling, hopeless place. Mm-hmm. Understanding the map is that, the phoenix is reborn, always. It's promised. So if we understand the map, and part of the act of coaching and even being a good friend is saying, oh, no, there is something on the other side of this. So keep moving forward. It's not nihilism, entropy, the end of things. This is a phase, and there is a very different and much better phase afterwards.
Yeah, Josh, I want to go back to something you said. It reminded me of how trapped we are by our past. We are an accumulation of memories and an accumulation of all the things that we have decided about ourselves, our beliefs, all the stuff that we've just accumulated. And we tend to think, or I can talk about me, I tended to think that if I just do the right things and follow the right strategies from all the things I've accumulated for the last 45 years of my life, that I will get there. But what this showed me was you got to give that up and recreate from a foundation and a belief in you. And that only comes with that letting go of all the other shit so that you can actually live in the present and create yourself forward and let go of all the expectations and the judgments and the ways that you thought that it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I relate. I think that's actually, as we're talking, this is what's coming up, is like a lot of men go through midlife crisis. And I actually think that's part of what midlife crisis is. We're actually going, oh, wait, my old operating system doesn't work for me anymore. I'm getting older. My body's changing. Things that I could get away with when I was younger, just because I was younger, doesn't work as I get older. So if we don't learn it earlier on, we're confronted with the body changing and forced to change. Like I'm going through that now of like, oh, I've ran sprints my whole life. I'm like, I'll take on the world. I'll hammer through. I'll outwork it. I'll outdrive it. And now my body's going, nope. I'm going to punish you. I'm going to beat you up. And if you don't listen to me, I'm actually going to kill you. Like that's how, like I'm learning to go, all right, I didn't listen 100 other times. I'm now forced to listen to go, it's about the marathon. It's massively about, to your point, I'm getting forced humbly at 43 to learn it. I know guys learn it all different areas and all different ages. I see men in their 50s, men in their 60s, men in their 30s, men in their 20s. But I think this is part of what we're learning is and if I had to drill it down, part of this is learning to father ourselves. I think is where we're a generation of uninitiated men that didn't learn how to be men, and we're learning how to father ourselves and then father each other and help each other grow through this phase. So hopefully our youth or our children can get there much faster than we did. Instead of midlife crisis, maybe we have like adolescent rites of passage so they become men much earlier on.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I've got a sense that it's going to be generations, not just next generation, because there's a lot of work to be done. And it's slow. It's not, if you have to go through the dark night to get to the other side, to wake up enough to be willing to do this. I've got clients, people that I've worked with who haven't been there. And in spite of all their intentions, they aren't quite ready for moving into the next phase. And they very often go back to some of the same things that they were doing before. So it's tough to just learn it without going through the pain.
Yeah. And I also think as we get just anybody listening that's going, I'm in it right now. You guys are hitting the spot for you. If anybody's listening, just another reframe is sometimes it can get scarier. Like as you step into it, you're like, oh, I want to go back. Like, what cave did I get myself into? But a nice little reframe is you're about to get what you're desiring. Like there's you're right up butting up against the breakthrough when it gets messy because you're losing your sense of identity. That's why you're in the unknown mess. You've stepped away from your known world of identity. This is the way the world works. And you've entered a new place where you lose that identity. As Philip's talking about the death and rebirth and the Phoenix reborn, that's what my observation is. That's what's happening is we're getting confused. When I used to work with Tony Robbins, used to celebrate. Hey, when you're confused, we would celebrate. And that's why, is because we're about to get to the next level of growth, but we have to lose our identity first to become the next version of us. So if anybody's listening and you're in the mess and you're scared and you're like, I want to go back, or I signed up to grow and now my life's a mess. Great. That's what you signed up for. You're about to step through the other side to actually get all the things that you want. So just keep moving forward.
Yeah. I love it.
One other add to this next question, Andy, is that one of the premises of the abyss is that you can't get through it alone. This is a big issue in today's isolated, pride-based culture. A lot of individuals, people want to hide their messiness from the world, social media, and it's really easy to run without the accountability of other people, almost enforcing that you continue moving forward. You had to keep moving forward because you have a wife and you have a son. So there are certain things that were indispensable for your forward progress. You have a responsibility, a duty. You had some big pieces. And so for the people who are watching or listening who are thinking that they're going to get through this on their own and try to hide this from the world, it's not going to work. At some point, you have to get transparent and vulnerable and accept some accountability and support to get you through that really uncomfortable time. So
yeah, that was one of the hardest things for me, is to accept help from my wife, accept help from my son. Even that's really where it came from my mom and my sister, and not even knowing what the help was. I didn't even know your phone call was help, even though it didn't really make me feel any better. It just reminded me, oh yeah,
it's not my job, Andy, make you feel better.
Right. It's not. I remind that to my clients all the time. That's my job to do the opposite most of the time, because it's got to come from otherwise it's inauthentic. Otherwise that's the problem that I'm running from. That's the problem of the whole setup of my life, is it didn't come from inside and I didn't trust what was inside. So yeah, I remember one of the first or second nights that I had a panic attack in my bed trying to go to sleep. And I came downstairs and my wife was still up. She's typically up working after I went to bed at like 8:30 or 9, and she's up working. It's like 11, hadn't slept a wink. I'm covered in sweat. And I told her what was going on. I'm like, should I go to the doc? Should I go to the hospital? Like, is there something really wrong with me? And after talking for about 10 or 15 minutes, she goes, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. You just have anxiety. Like, I've been going through this my whole life. Like, the way I heard it was, man up, you pussy. Just deal with it. You're having it. You're not dying. Nothing's wrong with you. Just be with it. And it was loving. She didn't say that. Her way of saying it was much more loving. But what I heard was, wow, so this is what it's like when people say they have anxiety. This is what it is. Like, oh, this is what it means to wake up and feel like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through the day. I don't know if I'm going to make it through the day. And then just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it brought a whole new level of understanding and appreciation for my wife, because she operates in this zone quite a lot in her life. She has anxiety. She has a lot of stuff. And the amount of compassion that I now have that was just not possible. I didn't relate to it. I thought, oh, you got anxiety? That's nice. Take a couple of aspirin, get a good night's sleep, wake up in the morning, and you'll be fine. And yeah, that's not true. It's not accurate. And I needed a reset. And that was part of the reset.
When I went through my last big abyss, been a couple of them recently, loss of career, even becoming a dad, that was an abyss for me, because I knew that I was never going to get certain things back. It was like, oh, fuck, game over. I'm never going to be that guy again. Yep. There's been a couple of those. And that was really the thing that drove me into meditation, is that if I can't deal with what's going to happen in this next hour, I don't know how to process the next hour of my life, not to mention the day, week, month, year, but I can always handle what's happening right now. There are no problems right now, right? There are situations right now, but there are never any problems right now. At this breath, there's no problems. And sometimes I would fall back just to that 100 times a day to survive getting through a day. And really that was just the ultimate fall back into the keep of, I have surrendered all the battles that I was facing, but I know I can handle this moment. That was where and be able to have established that, it has helped me out substantially in navigating the stresses of my current life, is that I know I can fall back to right now.
I remember listening to a podcast where I heard it was a Navy SEAL. I don't remember what podcast he was on or who it was, but he talked about chunking time down, chunking it down. And that was how I got through this trip. We were taking this cross-country trip to go to my son was going to Cooperstown for baseball, and we were flying into Cleveland and then taking a road trip from Cleveland and going through the Niagara Falls. And that was when I was in the thick of it. And I just started chunking it down. I don't know what I'm going to do later today, but right now I'm packing my suitcase. I can do that. And I can call Uber. I can do that. Okay. Now I can put my bags into the Uber. I can do that. And so I just chunked it down and made it through.
Push the rock. Just keep pushing the rock.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
I think just one other piece to add is, because for me, when I see anxiety or when I see depression or when I've seen it in myself, for me, it's taken me a long time to develop the awareness to it, but it's like, oh, I'm in pain, not shame. And I'm resisting feeling what's present. And so how do I get into, or like, as Bly would say, we need to learn to drink grief like a fish drinks water. Philip would mention that quite a bit. Is that, to me, is the metaphor, like, oh, I need to feel something in here I'm not feeling. And my avoidance of this is my anxiety. My avoidance of this is my depression. So how do I actually get into those states or get into the body? Is just my really clear, like, okay, cold shower, cold plunge, all the regulation practices are getting in the body, because I'm stuck in the head, or I'm shut down from some level, I'm shut down from the body. So just again, if anybody was listening to Andy was like, wow, I'm in that right now. Just a reminder, you're in the head. How do you get into the body?
There's no time in the body. Anytime there's future or past, you're in the head.
Yeah, like, I think this just occurred to me while you were speaking, Josh. Mental health is an innate birthright that we all have. It's in us. I don't care how bad road you're down. It sounds crazy to some people when you say that, like, who have been suffering from depression for years. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody's what they're going through. But when you slow down enough, when you allow the snow globe that is your mind to settle, when you allow all that shit to settle, you get to, and you allow your thoughts to settle down, because it's really your thoughts that are fucking you. Your thoughts are just on this rampage. And when those settle, your innate wisdom, you can access your innate wisdom. And that innate wisdom is something that you just have. It's like a tree has innate wisdom. It knows how to grow. An acorn knows to grow into an oak tree. It doesn't grow into a tomato bush. How does it do that? It has innate wisdom. And we have that. It's just our human mind gets in the way. And when we allow that to get out of we allow our thoughts to get out of our own way, it brings us back into balance, into a healthy state.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. I know we're getting a little bit close on time. I was curious, do you want to share two things. One, we always do a challenge, like for anybody that's been listening.
But also, Josh, before we get to too much challenge, we spend a lot of time wallowing in the grief of Andy Petranek. So I wanted to make sure that, like, oh, we didn't bring him on as this sad story. I was actually trying to get to all the cool shit you're doing right now too. So I wanted to kind of.
Well, I mean, what's funny is I don't look at it that way. Like, I can't think of a more important conversation to be having. And I love this conversation. I mean, it's a hard conversation, but the fucking conversations I'm having with my clients are hard conversations. Like, I look forward to those conversations. I look forward to digging deeper, to not being at the surface level. And yeah, it's not fun, but the result that you get out of doing this and having the courage to do this work is off the charts. And that's what excites me about my life. And, now it's just chop wood, carry water, one-on-one, serving one person at a time, going deep with my clients. For so long, I only worked with groups. But when I first started as an entrepreneur, I was just a personal trainer. And so it's been an interesting journey to go back to some of the practices and habits that it takes to build a practice from nothing. And it's not been as easy as I thought it might be. And like most coaches I talk to are like, yeah, if only I could just coach and my clients would just show up, like that would be wonderful. And well, yeah, that's true. But enrollment is part of coaching. It's just part of it. Just like getting clients you're no good to the world as a personal trainer if you don't have any fucking clients, or a teacher if nobody comes to your class, or a men's coach running a group if nobody's in your group. So you've got to learn
and overcoming all the fucking resistance and self-limiting beliefs and stories of those clients.
Yes.
Just do what I am telling you to do, and it works. But you're dealing with the psychological gatekeepers to get them to getting results. All right. Josh, get to the challenge. What's the challenge?
Well, I had two things. One, I wanted to do a challenge, and two, I wanted to hear what Andy's up to so we could share with anybody listening or any of our community, any programs, coaching, like let us know what you're doing. So those would be the two questions.
All right. Well, I can't answer the challenge question because I don't know what it is, but
we would create it. You would just say, hey, based on this conversation, what would be supportive for people to take in? Like, hey, do you want to focus on habits when you're going through it? Or like, what's a challenge that anybody listening could do something with this conversation, apply it?
I mean, one of the challenges that I really loved, my friend Scott McGee, I don't know if you guys know him, but he started a thing, this is like 4 years ago now, where the month of, he calls it's a mile. You have to do a mile every day of the month of December. December is like he calls it the character mile. So every day you've got to get a mile in, whether it's running or walking or whatever the fuck it is. And I started doing it 1 year. I have not stopped. I mean, when I'm sick, I've been on and off sick for the past couple of weeks. So I haven't really been disciplined about doing that. I've been recovering, but you've got to accumulate a mile of moving. And now my thing is 2 miles. So I've been doing 2 miles now every day for, 3 years. Mm-hmm. So I'd say put a date in the calendar. It's June 21st for the next month, from the 22nd till July 22nd, put in a mile a day. See what happens.
That's a challenge. There we go.
Yes.
Awesome. Great challenge. And then what are you up to? Can you share what you're up to?
Yeah. I mean, I really already said it. I haven't, I'm kind of an eggs in one basket kind of guy. So I work one-on-one with clients. I work with them for periods of 3 months to 3 years or longer. In terms of business, that's really what I'm up to. And the people that I'm working with, I wish it was narrow. I wish I could say, well, I'm working with entrepreneurs who are 55, have blue eyes, 3 dogs and 2 cats and 3 kids and drive a Volvo, but I don't have that. It's like a shotgun. The people that I'm working with men, I work with women.
Maybe like what you help them do, like what you help them accomplish, like what goals so that way somebody listening may go, I'm working on that.
Yeah, it's really everything that we talked about. It's getting past their limiting beliefs to create a version of themselves for their future that is one that they've always dreamed of. Like to become and be who they always were meant to be. And they just forgot. They lost their way when they were 5. Let's rekindle that. Let's find that. Let's create that. It's good shit. It's fun.
Awesome.
How do we get in touch with Andy Petranek?
I mean, my website is old and needs redoing. It's Andy@andypetranek.com. Well, that's my email, but it's andypetranek.com is my website.
Okay.
I'm Andy Petranek on all socials. Yeah, it's pretty easy.
There it is. Well, hey, what a pleasure to get
This has been I mean, like I said, I can't think of a more prudent and important conversation to be having. So I really appreciate being around people who believe the same thing, who are having this conversation. It's really a treat to do this and to have this dialogue publicly. It's great. I love it. So thank you guys.
Well, hey, so we'll sign off the podcast. If you can stay on for a couple minutes, and some of the K4 guys are on, and they've been hot in the chat here, got some questions for you. But until then, everybody else, stay battle tested.